Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today. We are Speak Up, Speak Out. We're also known as SUSO, and we are so honoured and excited to be part of Global Black Youth Virtual Festival. I'm Neil Dessy, I'm part of the SUSO team, and I'll be moderating today's session. So Speak Up, Speak Out was created this summer, and it's a platform for Black and minority professionals to come and share their experiences in a safe and inclusive space. We want to educate, inform, and empower our members to be and do more by giving them access to information resources and connecting them with a network of allies, mentors, and sponsors. So in our session today, we are going to discuss disrupting the entrepreneur scene, both in startups and within corporates. And we're going to explore the transition from having an idea to scaling a business, how important it is to share your resources, and what investors look for in businesses. And you're also going to hear about what we've got in store for the SUSO's Entrepreneurs Club. And we will have some time for Q&A at the end, so please do add your questions in the chat and we will circle back to them. I'm going to introduce our speakers and then they will share their career journeys with us. So we've got Steve Morgan. Steve is the founder of Speak Up, Speak Out. He's also the head of an operations and technology division within an investment bank. We've got Sevetri Wilson. Sevetri is the founder and CEO of Resilia. We have Summer Suleiman. Summer is the creator of the distillery and head of content at SUSO. And Federico Salvati. He's a professor of business management and marketing at NYU and an independent venture CMO advisor. So Steve, I'm going to come to you first. If you can share your career journey with our audience.
Hi, everyone. It's really great to have you on the platform. Really appreciate you taking the time on a Saturday to spend time with us, and hopefully you can leave with a few pieces of information that be valuable to you in your next journey. So my journey started at 16. I left school. When I got lucky and got an opportunity at the Bank of England, which is where I pretty much done my higher education. Started in the operations space and then moved to an investment bank where, you know, it was very different, almost working for the government, to going private, and did a variety of different roles within operations for up to 25 years. I went through the ranks. I went through the ranks pretty quickly in the organization through endeavor, perseverance, and what I didn't realize at that time is that I was an entrepreneur because it wasn't a language that we used so often back then. But ultimately, the way I've always thought about things is to change things all the time, to improve things all the time. And now I consider myself to be an intrapreneur because I'm internal, creating change. And I still am finding my entrepreneur, which is a really exciting place to be in my career right now.
That's great. Thanks, Steve. And Sevetri?
Someone said 25 years and you look so young. No,
He's got good lighting. Don't let it fool you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sevetri Wilson. I'm the founder and CEO of Resilia, and we are a SaaS technology platform working across a double-sided market. On one side, we service nonprofit organizations, bringing capacity support to their day-to-day operations. And on the other side, we service enterprises, so specifically private foundations, corporations, municipalities or cities, and other governments. I started my journey in entrepreneurship fairly young at 22 when I started my first company, Solid Ground Innovations, and it was a core strategic communications and management agency. So advertising, marketing, essentially running other channels for brands, corporations, political figures, you name it. That company still exists today, although I stepped away to focus on my technology startup. And so to date, I've raised about $11 million in venture capital across 3 rounds, pre-seed, seed, and venture capital. So I would definitely consider myself a serial entrepreneur, and the majority of the last 15 years has been in that space, from a bootstrap side. So running a company without any capital to now running a company with a board of directors and investors who support our journey and our work. So happy to be here and look forward to answering any questions you might have.
That's great. Thank you so much. Summer?
Morning, everyone. It's great to be here with you all. I am Summer Solomon, and I started covering entrepreneurship in 2014 and here in New Orleans, which is where I am. And what I found at the time, I am a journalist by training, and what I found is that a lot of stories were focusing on the successes and the seemingly easy rise to successes for startups, but spending so much time with entrepreneurs here on the ground in New Orleans, I found a different reality, and particularly the challenges for entrepreneurs and founders of color. I felt that their experience was different than other founders. And I wanted to focus on telling their stories and their challenges. And I think probably the defining moment for me was when I sat down with two founders here in New Orleans of color, and they told me about their experience walking into a room full of investors. And that experience compared with the other stories that I had heard from founders, I felt like there was a need to tell those stories and focus on them. And so I've been doing that for the past 6 years now through the distillery, and I'm now joining the SUSO team to continue to tell those stories, and excited to be here with you all today.
Thanks so much. And Federico, over to you.
Sure. My name is Fed. I'm originally from Italy, but I moved to the UK first. For about 17 years, I was living in London, and now I live between Dallas and New York. I founded 4 companies in my life, 5 actually, if you consider the one that I funded with my friends when we were 11. And and we were taking kind of old newspapers from ladies, hairdresser, and we were just reselling them in front of church in Italy. Because they wanted to get rid of them anyway. So we thought we might as well just make a few bucks out of it, It's a bit like that. And so 5, if you count that one. I launched about 20 products in my life between Asia, the United States, and Europe. And I am now a venture developer in the sense that I bring companies that have a specific potential to scale and kind of skip raise of funding. I am co-founder of the venture capital and venture developer Sevetri. The reason why we called it Sevetri is because if you think about it, it was the train in New York that came from Queens straight into Wall Street. And it was the train of dreams. This is why we wanted to call it, because we invest in underrepresented groups on Sevetri. And so by underrepresented group, I mean, of course, women, like different cultures, different groups, immigrants, different people types sometimes. People like myself, I am not the regular CRO or CMO. I actually like to have fun. I actually like to dance even during during a conference.
I can vouch for that. I can vouch for that.
Exactly. I don't like to take myself too serious, but unfortunately, when you go to some venture capital investors, you have to be all buttoned up. Get out of here. We don't need any of that nonsense. So that's who I am right now. That's what I do. Trying to have fun and work on my tan.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much. It's great to have you. So Steve, I'm going to start with you and your experience in corporate. What does entrepreneurship look like in the corporate environment, and how have you seen that evolve in recent years?
Yeah, as I said before, it's not a word we really use, and now sometimes I think we overuse it, but it's most certainly something. The word entrepreneur and innovation is widely used, and culturally, I think we're growing into that as an organization. I think when you're an organization like ours that is 200 years old, there are a lot of traditions and boundaries and processes that you still need to change, and they take a little bit more time. But for me personally, I made a big decision that I was just going to be I'd normally say, if I was assessing myself, I'd say I was probably 75 to 85% authentic prior to 2017, right? There's still that other 25% was invested in corporate politics and all of the different things around how do I get on? How do I grow my career? How do I be what they want me to be, or what looks perfect in the eyes of the organization. And in 2017, I had a breakthrough moment for me personally, where I said, I'm going to be 100% authentic. And the second I did that, my career and my prospects, the ability for me to do things has completely changed. So I've always been considered as being successful, but that 25% has given me real freedom to do some pretty spectacular things that we're doing in our organization. So I moved to the technology side. I moved to the technology side. I run a big team of technology and technologists, ranging from data scientists to we have AI, NLP built in. We've built 18 platforms in the cloud in the last, 12 platforms in 18 months in the cloud, and that's probably not really been achieved in banks before, and not widely by the group my size. But you know what is true out there is that banks will innovate, and the whole point around this is we often spend time thinking that the banks won't let us, or they won't let us do this because of these processes, but we don't really know until we tried. And since I tried, it's been non-stop for us, right? And then just to that point, you know, one of the things I look for entrepreneurs to join my team. Like, not every idea, not every entrepreneur is going to be successful round one. And there's a lot of things that corporations like us can help you understand around running a professional product, business, franchise. So that experience can be invaluable. What I want people who think different, act different, and have that entrepreneurial spirit to bring to our platform, with the hope that they have freedom to innovate and be the entrepreneur on our platform. And if not, the hope would be that one day you've got enough relationships and connectivity in an organization like ours that you have resources to go do your thing.
And I think that's really reassuring, what you were just talking about kind of tapping into that 25% that otherwise you were wasting trying to be someone other than who you genuinely are. Because I think we spend so much time and effort in our careers trying to fit into what a corporate person looks like, or how you can succeed. And like, where I guess personally, like, so scared to just be myself because I don't think that's accepted and I wouldn't get by. So I'm like super inspired to hear that, because I guess I probably didn't really think that there would be a success story for that.
I'm still surprised, to be honest. I'm like, at some point, I'm going to get tapped on the shoulder. All right, Stephen, enough's enough, rein it in. But I can't tell you how supported I am by my management and how much free rein they do. It doesn't mean that I do everything I want to do. I still make sure I get the job done for the firm and my management. But that just affords me time to go and do the things that I think I need to do. And it's been really amazing and refreshing for me.
And Sevetri, you've always been an entrepreneur, and you went from working with a non-profit to starting your first company and have built up a portfolio of corporate clients along the way. How did you start your first client relationship? And like, what is your advice for entrepreneurs who want to do the same?
So I do feel that when you're trying to break in as a small business or a startup into the corporate world and actually land them as clients, a lot of it really does start with like networks, right? So the connectivity that exists between entrepreneurs and small businesses, and then those who are working inside of corporations who essentially have the ability to award contracts. And for me, I come from a fairly small city, so I didn't, a small town in which we definitely didn't have Fortune anything companies. Even in New Orleans, where I'm based in summer as well, I think we have maybe 1-2 Fortune 500 companies. And then we have other private held companies. And then I began to do work across the country as well. And so one thing that I realized is that it was about creating a rapport and being able to network with other corporations, but also when you have the ability to sit across the table with someone who is a decision maker, understanding exactly what you have to offer and how you can help them. I think that there is a scenario between startup and corporate partnerships. A lot of small businesses and startups can find it very difficult to navigate the corporate landscape, just because of the bureaucracy and how slow it can move in relationship to how fast startups like to move. And one of my investors engaged, one of the reasons why we brought them on as an investor, because they did just that. So they took their, they invested in their portfolio and they matched them to their LPs, their limited partners, who were specifically corporations. So your IBMs, your Goldman Sachs, your UPS, they have probably over 36 corporations and other entities that are their LPs. And the reason why they created the fund is because they felt that the startup corporate partnership was becoming lost. And lost in where startups found it very difficult, unless they did have those relationships, unless they were working in some of these smaller startups who have become large, to actually access some of the older guys on the scene. So your cities that have been around for like centuries. But I do feel that there's an opportunity there, right? Because you have a startup corporate partnership, which gives freedoms to both parties. On one side, you have corporations who have now the freedom to quickly pursue market opportunities. And then on the startup side, you have the freedom to execute an innovative idea with ideally a partner, a customer who has a lot more resources than you do, right? And so for me, it's about looking at those opportunities and seeing how our company, our startup, can come into partnership with corporations today.
Thank you so much. And Summer, you mentioned at the start in your intro that you started covering entrepreneurship back in 2014. What have you identified as critical success factors among entrepreneurs?
So one of the, I would say, factors that comes to mind first is really an indefatigable persistence. So every entrepreneur that I have spoken to or interviewed or written about, and Sevetri can attest to this, is they have all experienced setbacks time and time again. That's almost like I feel like that should be like a entrepreneur checklist requirement. And those setbacks come in so many different forms, whether it's not being able to secure funding, not being able to bring on investors in a critical point in the startup's journey, or not being able to find the right employees, or building the right team. And so every single successful entrepreneur, and by success I mean through profit, through revenue, through growth, every entrepreneur has been able to persist through all of those challenges. I would say the other common factor that I found among entrepreneurs is they early on were able to identify their abilities and their talents and their strengths and weaknesses, and able to find and hire the right people and build the right team around them. A lot of times with entrepreneurs, they're starting companies and it's their babies, and they've put so much into it, and they have a vision of how they want everything to operate. But at some point you realize that in order to scale, you really have to build the right team around you, and the right people to do that. And so entrepreneurs who are able to identify that early on, I think we're successful. And I would say the other trait is stamina. Entrepreneurs have to have an incredible amount of stamina. I think pretty much every time I talk to Sevetri or Steve, they're working and resting in between small periods. And I think people underestimate the stamina that's required, and that's part of why I wanted to write and shed light on the real experiences of entrepreneurs, because it doesn't stop. When you're a small business owner, the more your company grows, the more the work grows with it, and so you have to really be able in it for the long haul. And so every successful entrepreneur I've talked to, from Sevetri to Jonah Peretti, the founder of BuzzFeed, has said stamina. A
certain amount of resilience, no doubt. Federica, you're an experienced consultant and you've had, quite a varied career in tech and innovation. What do VCs look for when they're assessing an idea or a business opportunity?
I think, first of all, it's a blend of the things that we have discussed with Steve, Sevetri, and with Summer. In the sense that, specifically to Summer's point, do never, ever underestimate the power of a catnap in between tasks, because that's fundamentally important for you then to really kick ass when it comes to your next call, to your next meeting, because your synapses needs to be on fire all the time. There's no downtime ever, because otherwise they'll eat you alive. The rest of the team will eat you alive. You always have to lead the pack, unfortunately. It is what it is. I think that to Steve's point, I was once talking to a very good friend of mine, is Iago. He's a sculptor. And he's an extremely successful sculptor right now. His sculptures go for millions. So if you want to check him out on YouTube. He's absolutely fantastic. It is Jago, Iago. And we were just talking as I was with him and he was working on this sculpture. And he said, we need to accept what we have to offer and just speak up. It's absolutely pointless to be anybody else, because trust me, you get into that meeting room and you're presenting your idea. If you're not who you are, it's not going to stand on its own two legs. I can see it right away. And that's extremely important, I think. Going to your question, there is, the way I personally, the 4 things that I look for whenever somebody pitches an idea is the theme interesting and something that I understand? Does it have solid multiples? Can I grow as fast as my investors need me to grow investments? And so I start looking at the actual team. That would be the first thing. One-man bands, never cut it, because it's unexecutable to an extent. And you need to have clear senior roles. And my suggestion to anybody that is starting a business is to have a good board. To have people that support you. The board needs to help you in 2 things: skills that you do not have in your senior leadership, and relationships to open doors. These are the 2 key things, which is to, I think, Sevetri's point with regards to having the right partners in the organization that can open doors for you, that can help you understand the opportunity at scale, thanks to the relationships that they have, and the intricate balance that they find themselves within. The 4th point, it would be, we need to look at the fundamentals. You really need to look at the fundamentals of the business. Is the market ready for it? And is it big enough? And can these folks execute? Can they sell, first of all? And so it goes to my point that a meeting normally can be done in 2 minutes, 3 minutes, if somebody can't tell me a good story. And if somebody is not who they are. And when you tell a good story, please start from 30,000 feet. Don't dive into the clicking through the technology. I don't need that. Tell me, why does the market need what you're doing? What has been done in the past that did not work? How do you think you're going to attack that segment? How are you going to tell me the story about how quickly and timing you're going to grasp that market opportunity? Then we can deep dive into whatever it is that you're trying to sell me in a nutshell. I hope this was helpful.
Yeah, that's super helpful. And Steve, coming back to you, there is some skepticism about whether there really is a space for entrepreneurs to succeed in a corporate environment. Like, what's your take on that, and what are some of the challenges that they can expect?
Look, I think if you're different, then it's really hard for everyone to accept and understand that value immediately, right? So, and if everyone's different, then you're not different, right? So those differences you have are really it's really the first thing you have to recognize within yourself in a corporation and actually own that. Then you have to think about, what is it people want to hear, or how do they want to receive information? And no matter what conversation, whatever kind of conversation you're having, whether it's with an investor, whether it's with your manager, there's got to be a value proposition around what you're trying to do. And you have to be able to explain that in a really articulate way. But once you start to have that value and that sense of purpose and doing the right thing, and particularly no matter where you are, even if you're CEO, right, you still have shareholders. Whether you're a analyst, you have a manager, you always have to answer to someone, right? So, and whoever's put their money into you, you have a fiduciary and a responsibility to deliver what you said you're going to do for those people. How you get there is always going to be very different. And sometimes some people get too involved in that decision making and some don't. But ultimately, as long as you're doing the right thing and you're progressing and delivering against your commitments to whoever your stakeholder is, there's a space for you, and particularly in our organization.
Cool. And Sevetri, I'd love for our audience to hear more about Resilia. So can you talk to us about kind of the journey and the various steps that were involved in taking it from being an idea to an established business?
Sure. I probably don't have enough time, but I will say
from 30,000 feet, like Feda said.
So when I started Resilia, it was actually originally called Exit Me Now. And so we were doing
you have a very cool idea. I love it.
Thank you. We're doing something fairly simple early on because my first company, as I mentioned, Solid Ground Innovations, one of our arms, we were helping nonprofit organizations. And one way that we helped them, we actually took those who are looking to start a nonprofit through the incorporation exemption process. And it was very like time consuming, taxing. The long forms were like 30 plus pages, the IRS. Generally, people went to their accountants and their attorneys. Their accountants and attorneys were coming to us to do it, almost like a white label, or to LegalZoom. And then people would come to us with these big LegalZoom binders because they got stuck. LegalZoom only being a prep for company, they prep, they don't file. And so we essentially began to productize our services, and that's what we were seeing in the space. And we automated the process across all 50 states. And so we essentially, as we say, TurboTax the process of incorporation exemption for nonprofits across all 50 states and delivered through a software solution. And so that was Exit Me Now. And we're like, okay, yeah, this is going well. You know, customers were coming to us, attorneys, accountants were coming to us to do the work on behalf of their customers. But then we began to think about how we could essentially take something that was a one-off service and begin to morph it into more of a subscription-based service, and thus creating this recurring revenue. I come from the world of SaaS, so software as a service, and I believe like SaaS is the future, and subscription-based products are kind of like the wave of what is here to stay. And so we began to think about how we could essentially morph our services into recurring revenue. And we began to make more products, right? So we released a subscription-based products for those organizations that were forming through us. So that one-time service, now they were accessing our platform on a regular basis and subscribe to receive templates, webinars, this robust space of content, similar to like a HubSpot for nonprofits. And then we started thinking about how we could create a double-sided market. And so you have these grantees, these nonprofits who generally receive funds from some type of grant maker or funder. And we were also working with these funders as consultants. And so we were helping scout new nonprofits for them to fund and new initiatives for them to fund. We were helping them provide support services to the organizations that they were funding. And so we felt that there was opportunity to create a product for them too. And in doing so, we created a one app solution that services both sides and creates one connective tissue across grantees and grant makers, and thus rebranded to Resilia to speak to our full suite of products. And so although that original Exit Me Now product still exists in market today, the majority of our revenue actually comes from our other two products, specifically our enterprise product, which caters to those larger funders and grant makers, which for us was a plus during 2020, where a lot of companies had a lot of hardships because we have seen more unprecedented giving, right, in new funds standing up, in new capital being deployed. in new billionaire pledges being started, it actually is a benefit for us because that is our target customer. And so we hope to see that continue in 2021. We hope that people will continue to double down on the commitments that they have made, whether that is to social injustice and creating more equitable practices, and to essentially trying to, as we would say, create more equal playgrounds for more people, and giving people more opportunities, whether that's in corporate philanthropy, across the board. And so as the company, we definitely have a very social driven mission, which I think is an advantage to us because we have such a high ratio of targeted team members, those who we target to come work for us, who actually come on board. And a lot of them always go back to why they came on board, because of the social mission behind the company and what we're driving, the things that we're trying to change in the world. From the other side of things, right, how I got here, in order for us to be able to scale software, right? So I came from this bootstrap company that was more services based, in which we didn't have to raise capital for, to now building software, which isn't cheap. And what I learned very quickly is not cheap. And for us to capture a specific portion of the market share, for us to go head to head with certain competitors, for us to be able to actually get Salesforce to sign off on a partnership with us, we have to have capacity to support their customers, or a Blackbaud who we just signed a partnership with. And so we recently raised a Series A round, about 8.5 million Series A. And so we have a collective of new investors who have put their stake in the ground with us to say that we believe there's a huge opportunity here. One, to build software in a space that has generally been technology averse, and to, in many ways, create a new spectrum of products to service a new culture shift, right? And so one that we are betting on, that society has shifted to be more focused on philanthropic endeavors, more focused on giving, more focused on wanting to hold the people the places that they shop at accountable, from not just taking, but also giving to the community around them. And so it definitely has been a very long journey, but one that has been successful thus far. And we look forward to continue to grow out our team and continue to build the products in which we feel are making a great impact.
Perfect. I mean, I can totally relate to that, because I would say, like, this year more than any other year, I have like revisited where I spend my money, who I spend my money with, what is their stance in the movements that have been, prominent this year, what are they doing for the social, environment around them. And I think, it's definitely on a continuous basis, I question that. So that's kind of inspiring to hear. And there is a question which we'll come to later, but about authenticity. And I think when you talk about what you're doing, that just comes through, that your business is so true to who you are, because it just comes through in your energy and when you talk about it. So super inspiring. Samar, I'm going to come back to you, and your coverage on the distillery focused on the challenges rather than the successes of entrepreneurs. And so from some of those stories, what advice would you give to an entrepreneur who's either starting out or they've like hit a bit of a roadblock?
I would say, as someone who is a supporter of entrepreneurs and the community, I would say that the one thing that I learned that kept coming up over and over with every entrepreneur that I interviewed or sat down with was the need for community. I think that as an entrepreneur, the road is often long and lonely. And I think that when you are building a company, oftentimes you have to explain kind of to people what you're doing if you're not, since it's not the sort of traditional route, whether that's family or friends or partners or significant others. And so the one thing that I found that that the distillery, added the most value to for entrepreneurs is a community of people who, are either on the same path or similar paths as you, people that you can convene with, people that you can connect with, especially who are on in similar paths. So you have entrepreneurs who are in different stages, right? So you have some who are early stage, some who are in idea phase, others who are like Sevetri, who have been on the fundraising path. And so your needs will change. And so I think it's important to have like a strong and diverse community and network that you can reach out to, which would be the kind of second most important thing, is building your network. And so it's particularly important for founders of color or first generation founders don't often have that nice cushy network built in. And so you really have to go outside of, I think, where you are, whether it's in the town that you're in, whether it's your physical location or whatever that may be, and build your network up, because those people are going to be, your network are going to be the ones who introduce you to other founders and to potential investors and to potential partners. And so I think that those are two critical things to the founder that a founder and entrepreneur should always be building and nurturing, is your community, for the people that you can lean on and give to, and also your network, which you should always be expanding.
Right. And Federica, I'm really keen to hear from you. What is the best pitch you've heard and what made it stand out?
I can actually name the name, right? I can actually name the company.
Yeah.
It's a
Federico, you're the one that will get in trouble with them if
exactly.
So
not me.
It's,
that is true. That is true. It's a company called StateSet, and these two guys, Vic and Dom, what they had that was absolutely special is that you could tell that they were perfectly complementary with each other. They said an amazing story. They focused a lot on why the timing was right and why we were instrumental to the success of StateSet through our network. And for us, they made it look like, yeah, it's actually quite easy to just plug and play. You know what I mean? And so they did an amazing job at making the story very straightforward. Then you get into the due diligence, and you have to be extremely responsive when it comes to the due diligence. So I don't want to get too into the tactical part, but that was definitely the best thing. When we went into the due diligence, what I liked about that is that whatever was business oriented, one would take and would respond immediately. And the more technologist, which is Dom, he would be able to build stuff so quickly and so fast, so well. We fell in love with people. And so the point here is that people make the pitch, people make the company. I partially care about what you're wearing as long as it's not disrespectful, if you know what I mean. If you come in flip-flops, not my thing. But you know what I mean? It's I think that you need to be who you are. You need to understand what your special power is. And these guys definitely understood what their special power is. And they were just true to themselves. They were fun, they were entertaining, they were to the point, and that was it. So it's a really cool company.
Check it out. Summer, I think this is the perfect forum to talk about the SUSO Entrepreneurs Club. So can you tell our audience about it and what's in store?
Yes, the SUSO Entrepreneur Club, we are super excited about it. I would say that this is Steve's baby, and I'm here to co-parent, but we really want to create a platform for entrepreneurs to connect and to get access to information, to resources, to engage, and really do a lot of what I was speaking to earlier, is have that community of people who look like you, who are from similar backgrounds like you, which I think is a really important part of building your community. And we also want to expand our network, and I'll ask Steve to speak a little bit more about that, about the regions that we're interested in connecting with. And yeah, just creating a global network of entrepreneurs where they can connect, share ideas, resources, information. Steve, is there anything that you would like to add to that?
Yeah, so I'll just say we want to try and be the broker to partnerships and validation without a fee, right? So all we really want to do is, if you look at this network and the power of network is that, I worked with Neil many years ago. And
that many.
We through
He just made you sound old.
I know, right? He just made me
words.
sound old.
Well, yeah, I'm not gonna tell him how old you are. So through through that, Neil and I haven't spoken for years, but that connectivity, that power was there. When I set up SUSO, we connected, and here we are doing something I think that's pretty spectacular, and I'll talk about that in a little bit more, right? I met Summer through my wife's best friend who went to school together, and again, I'm not gonna reveal my wife's age, that would be deaf at home, but many years ago, and that's how I met Summer, through my wife's best friend, is one of my best friends now, her sister. And then Summer felt that me and Sevetri should meet because we had a lot in common, and Sevetri is now part of my family, right? So, and then Federico is linked to a company, a partnership with a friend he's someone who we did business with, City, to another company. We became friends through our kind of partnership. He went and spun his own company off. The new company C Group invested in. I was part of that decision making, not because he's a friend, let's be clear, because of great value proposition. And through that, I met another guy called Damien, and then Damien introduced me to Freddie. And this is how the ecosystem kind of comes together. And this is why it's so important to network, because you just never know. And so for the Entrepreneurs Club, what we're trying to do is, right now, we have a heavy presence in London and the US. We want to start just creating some transatlantic relationships. So someone's got an idea in New York, but no one's doing that in London. Maybe it's opportunity, right? Someone's got maybe that's an opportunity for you to start something in London or to invest and partner. So that's kind of the spirit of what we want from the Entrepreneurs Club, is just to connect people to be successful, right? We know that the inner circle has grown and become what it is and cut a lot of people out because it's an inner circle, but it is a tight network. It's not deliberate at times, it's just their network. So how are we going to be successful if we don't start creating our own network to support each other, right? So that's part of what this is about.
And then as we wrap up this part of the discussion, before we move to Q&A, we started the session with your corporate experience, but this summer you started Speak Up, Speak Out. So what compels you to start SUSO now?
Well, it was I think so 2020 has been an extremely difficult year, and I wish everyone health, and I know many people have some really sad stories and coming out of 2020, but in many respects, right, adversity creates change and sometimes opportunity. But for me, something broke inside me when this was all, when George Floyd, the George Floyd incident, right? And again, to be quite honest and brutal, the first few days didn't really affect me. I grew up in Brixton, and at 6 years old, there was riots happening around me because someone died in police incarceration, and a riot started. So 40 years on, the same thing's still happening. So when George Floyd actually, and 3,000 miles away, right? So it's no different in the UK, Brazil, South Africa, anywhere in Africa, it's the same, right? But for me, so when it first happened, it's like, okay, it's just another incident. These happen all the time. What changed was that I was stuck at home and the news just kept playing. And this time it wasn't something I could brush off and just go back to life. It was sitting inside me, and I had to start thinking about it more, and I started talking about it more. And as I started talking about it, things that I never really talked about, like, because it was just the said thing started to open up inside, which created an emotional outpour. And from that, I made a commitment that I'm gonna talk about the things that are unsaid in corporations. I'm gonna talk about some of the subliminal racism, the subliminal bias that happens, the subliminal gender preference, the subliminal clubs that happen in some of the corporations. And I'm going to speak openly about it because I don't think it will change until people do. And the reality is that these corporations do want to address it, but it's a very difficult environment to truly address it. But you have to be out there and you have to say stuff. But so internally I do a lot. But what I wanted is that we do so much internally. I don't think some firms have the resource, and I have a lot of resource, and that was demonstrated by the first time I did my first Zoom call. The amount of people that reached out, called, turned up on the Zoom call, told me that there's something powerful within the message, what we're trying to do, and just helping people. So, you know, for me, it's no longer really about me. I have a path, and I know where I want to go with my career and what I want to do next as an individual. But I think there's the impact that I could have on helping more people is probably what I'm more focused on right now.
And I will share the link in the chat for anyone who wants to go back and watch Steve's first talk and subsequent ones that we've had in our speaker sessions. But Steve, before we kind of finish this up, what's your long-term vision for the platform and how can people get involved?
So we want to be a place where you can come and be yourself, and you will to give and to take, right? So we want to help as many people as we want. We see this as a strategic network that will grow. It will lead into job opportunities. It will lead into mentoring, sponsorship. It will lead into helping to create and support and promote and drive future entrepreneurs and new businesses. We want to count and represent our difference, but ultimately, you know, I spent a lot of time thinking as someone that, you know, there's a lot of us complain about the past and all the things that have happened, and nothing's really changed, right? So I think we have to really think a little bit deeper and a little bit more strategic around some of the inequities and wealth within certain communities and how we're going to change that. But companies dropping $1 billion here or there is not going to change the game, right? This is, if you look at the wealth gap in, say, Black America, it's a multi-trillion-dollar issue, right? So $1 billion isn't really going to touch the sides unless we think really smartly and about how we're going to take that to strategically and build that over 100 years to truly change the story for generations 100 years from now. So that's kind of where my focus is as well, is figuring out, being educated. I feel that this year has been a big education for me on multiple aspects of who I am history-wise, and and some of the things that have happened in the past and how things have been facilitated. So I continue to just want to be educated and use that education to come up with a strategic path that changes generations 100 years from now.
Awesome. We've got a couple of questions in the chat. So I think this one may be for Sevetri and Federico. When you have an idea, what's the very first practical move you make towards making it a business? What are your thoughts?
You want me to take a stab at it, Sevetri? I saw you were on mute, so I offered to. The first thing that you need to do, first of all, you need to start pitching it to people and find a client. It's absolutely pointless for you to enter into a crusade without having tested your idea on the market. I highly recommend not to waste your hard-earned money that you get in your daily job just on a crusade. Or look for a place to sandbox it, which can be an agency, which can be a bank, which I know Steve does a lot of innovation, sandboxing, and very, very exciting things that you can do only with a partner that has a lot of resources. And so that would be my first word of advice. Over the years, I have learned to launch businesses, the ones that I created directly, only once I actually have 3 or 4 clients that commit for 1, 2, 3 years. Because stress doesn't help nobody. And it's a perfect testament on how strong your idea is if they're willing to give you their time and their sandbox. And yeah, that's what I would do. What do you think?
Any additional thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, my initial thought was I try to keep close, like advisor friends and people around me who I can bounce ideas off of, who I can freely speak with about what I'm thinking. And that would definitely involve like ideas that I may be coming up with. I actually just like pinged a friend of mine because I have an idea of something that I'm thinking about getting involved in. And he essentially is like, we consider like a GOAT in the space, right? And so because he knows so much in the space and he has done so much, I respect like his opinion. And so running ideas by people who may have been there, done that, or have done something comparable would be ideal if you have access, right? So going back to trying to access works is important. This idea like incubators and accelerators, et cetera, those models where you can go and speak with individuals. And accelerators are a little bit more advanced, but there are even earlier stage opportunities where you can go and like workshop ideas in entrepreneurial settings with individuals who generally help entrepreneurs for a living. So I think there are definitely ways to like workshop your idea a little bit to see if it has any legs to it. But definitely if you can get customers for it, I think to Rachel's point, that is the way to go. People pay you for it. That's a good sign, a good signal.
Yeah.
And like each of you touched on this point about authenticity, but we did have another question about what really do you mean by being yourself?
Can I take another stab? I don't know.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
It's who comes off unmute first.
Yeah, exactly. It's like in a Western movies, you know what I mean? Unmute. Don't change your voice, literally, quite physically. Do not change your voice. I want to hear your voice. This one that comes from here or from here or from here, wherever your voice comes from. A lot of people that are quite insecure, they start talking about, don't. Just don't do any of that. Understand what your superpower is. And if you're a storyteller, but you have a bit of difficulties like I do, for example, in the time that it takes to do legal things and stuff like that, just don't do it. You need to get somebody else because they will eat you up. And that's part of being yourself. Again, wear clothes that you would wear that represent who you are. And try to tell a story bearing in mind 2 things. Your listeners, you need to strike a chord in them somehow, because a communications fault is always in the communicator. But at the same time, people buy from people. And so I want to know who you are, because otherwise I'm not going to give you, it's not going to happen. So this is
I'd like to add to that, if I can, Neil.
Please.
I am a meditator. I'm a long time meditation practicer, and I always feel like it's a good way for me to like check in and get it and stay in tune with myself. And I've been in, thanks, Fed. I've been in offices, boardrooms, board meetings, situations, newsrooms, where I felt like I felt like I wasn't being myself. And in fact, this SUSO group and this community has been so wonderful. We were talking about it on the team earlier this week, because it feels like a place that feels like home, where, you know, it's like your people, you could be like your full self and speaking to like the things that Federico was saying, the way you speak, the way you carry yourself, the way you dress. And so I know what real feels like, and I know when I'm being my real self, and I know when I'm not. And so I feel like a good way to kind of check in with yourself is to always, is to just kind of like get quiet, get still, be with yourself when you can, because we know, right? We know when we're putting on, we know when we are not being like our full self, it doesn't feel good. And so I think it's always a good way to just kind of check in with yourself and to know when you're being your true self is to just sit with it and say, okay, if I had a moment, and I've done this, I've had moments in, boardrooms, meetings, whatever, and I kind of try to dig deeper. What was it about that moment? What was it about the people that I was with at that time that made me feel like that? What was it about myself that made me feel like I couldn't be my authentic self? And then I just kind of check in. It's like a good, just kind of meter for yourself.
Amen to that.
That's great. Okay, well, I think we should start wrapping up. We are over time. I'll hand over to Steve just to say a couple of words, but a big thank you to all of you who came and joined our session. A massive thank you to our speakers. Thank you. Invaluable advice for entrepreneurs. You guys get out there, take this advice and get going. Thank you so much from our team. We were so excited to bring you this session. So happy to be part of the GBY family today. Feel free to come give us a follow. We do monthly speaker sessions. We're going to take a little holiday break, but we'll be back in February and we hope to see you guys there. Steve, over to you just for any closing remarks.
Well, look, I just wanted to thank you and Summer specifically for the last, this was a last minute thing where we were asked to set up, and we set this up within two weeks, less than 2 weeks to do so. So thank you for all your hard work and setting this up. And then Federico and Sevetri, you're both amazing, and thank you for also agreeing to do it such last minute. Now, for everyone who gets to see this, we are simply here to help. We want to learn, we want to educate, we want to help, we want to connect you with people, and we wish you every success in your endeavors. Have a great end of year, and I hope 2021 is a lot happier for all of us. Take care.